Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. How are you today? I hope you're all fine. Today, the class is going to talk about routine. What's your routine like? What do you do every day? I'm going to tell you a little bit about my routine right now. And the question for routine is, what do you do every day? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do every day? What do you do every day? This is the question for routine. I wake up at 5 a.m. I wake up at 5 a.m. What about you? What time do you usually wake up? I usually read. I like reading in the morning. I always have my breakfast at 7 a.m. Yeah, I prepare my breakfast and I invite my husband to have breakfast with me. I often go to the gym because I think it's important going to the gym. So I often go to the gym in the morning. And depending on the morning, I sometimes teach, I sometimes do volunteer work in the morning, or I sometimes do my chores. I do my responsibilities at home. This is usually what I do in the morning. What about in the afternoon? What do I usually do in the afternoon? I hardly ever take a nap. I almost never have the chance of taking a nap. Okay? Let's imagine that if a month has 30 days, probably I will take a nap 3 times or 4 times in a month. So I hardly ever, okay, take a nap, but I love it. I think it's really important to have lunch and after that take a nap in the afternoon. I usually have a cup of coffee and I snack usually around 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And depending on the day, I sometimes teach, I sometimes do volunteer work in the afternoon. It's going to depend on the day. What about the evenings? In the evening, I go to the meetings. There are some meetings, some religious meetings that are very important for me. So I go to the meetings a week, twice a week, usually on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. I do volunteer work up to 8 p.m. sometimes, up to until 8 p.m., depending on the evening. I always study and read in the evening before I sleep. I like reading a little bit, studying a little bit. I always have dinner, and I go to bed around 9 p.m. I go to bed around 9 p.m. So, question, okay? The questions is the question is started with do, okay? Do you cook on Sundays? Do you go to bed at 9 p.m.? Do you wake up early? Jessica, what if I ask questions without do? It's not correct. If I say, you cook on Sundays, you cook on Sundays, this is not correct. Native people of English, okay? English speakers, they need you to tell them do if it's routine, did if it's in the past, will if it's in the future. You need to show it in the phrase, in the sentence, okay? So sentences about routine, the questions will start with do, all right? So, do you cook on Sundays? Do you cook on Sundays? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Or no, I don't. They don't live in the US. They don't live in the US. To say no for routine, you say Ron, Ron if it's American English. Or if it's British English, don't, don't. They don't live in the US. They don't live in the US. British English. Or they don't live in the US if you're American, okay? An affirmative sentence, we don't have to say do or don't, right? We go to work by bus. We go to work by bus. So for questions, sentences with I, do I? Sentences with you, do you? Sentences with they, do they? Sentences with we, do we? We use do in the beginning of the sentences. And for negative sentences, don't. All right. Jessica, what about sentences that makes reference? Sentences that make reference for she, he, and it. Next class, I'll give you further information about it, okay? What about you? What do you usually do every day? Well, to talk about routine, there will always be some useful expressions. You can use every day, every week, every month. So, I work every day. I go to the gym every week. I study every month. We can say the days of the week. Remember, the days of the week are combined, they come together with the preposition on Mondays, on Tuesdays, on Wednesdays, on Thursdays, on Fridays, on Saturdays, on Sundays. You can say in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, at night. Okay. I read the Bible at night. I read the Bible in the evening. I read the books at night. All right. It's really important to memorize the preposition and the word, okay, together. Once I go to the gym once a week, only on Mondays. Or I study English twice a week, only on Mondays and Wednesdays. I study English 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. Frequency. And there is an example here. The example says, I go for a run every morning. What about you? Do you run every morning? Ta-da! There are extra expressions, extra words to talk about routine. You can say always. I always take a shower. I take a shower every day. You can say usually. I usually eat rice and beans. I'm Brazilian. I don't know if you're Brazilian. If you're not, you're gonna tell me what do you usually eat, okay? Frequently, often, it's very common. Often, often. I often drive to work. I often drive to work. Sometimes, I sometimes go to work by subway or by underground. Subway is the American English, underground, the British English, or tube. I sometimes go to work by tube. Occasionally, occasionally, seldom, seldom, rarely, rarely or hardly ever. Yeah. I hardly ever take a nap, or I rarely take a nap. And never, never. I never go to the movie theater or something like this. Okay. So those words, they are very useful to talk about routine too. And every time we use those words, we have to pay attention at the position of the words. For example, I often read in the afternoon. Often read. Read is the action. Read is the verb. I never sleep late. Sleep is the verb. It's the action. So I never sleep. But when I use the verb to be, she's, I'm, these words always, usually, they will come after. Okay? I'm always punctual. I'm never late. And this is true, people. I'm always punctual. What about you? Are you always punctual? You're going to tell me on the WhatsApp, okay? I'm never late. What about you? Are you always punctual or are you always late? You're going to tell me that. Now I want you to repeat those questions after me. Remember, repeating is very important for your brain to memorize the right pronunciation. And it's important for you. Every time you communicate with a foreigner, you need to identify their pronunciation. So repeat after me. Do you usually make your bed? Do you usually make your bed? When I wake up, I usually make my bed. What about you? Do you usually watch TV? Do you usually watch TV? Or do you usually watch YouTube videos? YouTube videos? Or YouTube videos if you're British? When do you go to school? When do you go to college? College, university. When do you go to work? I usually go to work in the morning. When do you start school? When do you start college? When do you start work? I usually go to work at 8 a.m., but I usually start work at 8:30. When do you usually finish school? Or when do you usually finish college or finish work? I usually finish work at 5 p.m. When do you usually go back home from school? Or when do you usually go back home from college? Or when do you usually go back home from work? Well, I finish work at 5 p.m. So I usually go back home from work at 5:10. How often? How often is the question to talk about frequency? How often? How often do you take a shower? We Brazilians, we take a shower usually twice a day, right? What about you? How often do you usually take a shower? Do you take a shower once, once a day, twice a day, twice a week, 3 times a week, once a week? You're gonna tell me. And how often do you brush your teeth? Brush your teeth. How often do you go on Instagram? All the time? Never? Now it's your time for practicing. And I'm so excited. And I'm so excited for that. You will review the material and you will send a video or an audio answering the questions for me. Yes, all those questions here, you will answer them. You're going to talk about a little bit of your routine for me. Next class, we will talk about how to describe somebody else's routine. She, he, and eat. Okay? I can't wait for that. So see you next class. Thank you. Bye.